Welcome back to my new PlayStation 5. I'm going to be listening to Swindled while I finish cleaning this treehouse, and I will not be speaking very much. I I already heard this part. Hold on. Okay. Also, Atlas Shrugged is ridiculous. I hate that it's being name dropped here. The waterfall. In the Rockies. Of course he did. Dude, that's just sci-fi. Really? No. Mm-hmm. Mm. No.
Rand opposed the very idea that people are morally obligated to live for others and advocated for dismantling every form of collectivism, from public education to entitlement programs. And yet, on her deathbed with lung cancer, she quietly enrolled in Medicare and Social Security under her married name, Eileen O'Connor. Her defenders insisted she was simply reclaiming what the government had forced her to pay in, as if that isn't how the entire collectivist system is designed to work. Hypocrite or not, Ayn Rand's influence outlived her. The roster of libertarian and conservative politicians who pretend to have slogged through that book and swear allegiance to its author keeps getting longer, particularly among men with two first names. Ron Paul built his career on libertarian ideals. His son Rick, formerly known as Randy, also admits that he's
Rand
but
Paul.
insists he didn't rename himself after Ayn Rand when it became politically convenient. Yeah, okay. Former vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan once claimed without a hint of irony that Alice Shrugged, a book warning about the dangers of an authoritarian government, was, quote, the reason I got involved in public service. Until his Christian handlers reminded him that Ayn Rand was an atheist who magnum opus celebrates an adulterous affair, but he never mentioned her again. More recently, current Vice President J.D. Vance paraded a German shepherd named Atlas around on the 2024 campaign trail as an ode to small government,
Really?
supporting the deployment of federal military forces for domestic policing. And even Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has made his admiration evident, reportedly requiring his clerks to read both Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, novels he holds in nearly the same esteem as the collected works from his other favorite artist, Long John Silver. Over the years, playing golf has become a catchphrase among a group of taxpayers, especially during the Obama years when healthcare reform and modest tax hikes were treated as the first steps toward a communist takeover. The fantasy has always remained the same: self-interest and unfettered capitalism, standing tall in some hidden mountain valley while the rest of society begs for scraps. Just be aware, the self-anointed best and brightest among us are always standing at attention, ready to leave the rest of us behind, including this guy.
Oh.
This was Jeff Berwick, long before he declared himself a freedom fighter. He claimed the title of Canada's second best rapper. That's according to him. After coming to his senses, the Edmonton-born Berwick reinvented himself as an entrepreneur. In 1994, at just 24 years old, he launched stockhouse.com from his living room. Jeff says it grew into Canada's largest financial and investment news site before it all came crashing down during the dot-com bubble burst of 2000. After limping along for a few more years, Jeff finally sold off the remainder of Stockhouse in 2002. With the wreckage behind him, he spent the next few years traveling the globe, visiting over 100 countries, trying to understand the way the world works. The tech crash had shattered every previously held belief he had about economics, free trade, or even government. How does one build something so successful just to lose it all without the invisible hand knocking it over?
After process, what I realized was I needed to understand what happened because I started this company from so small, it grew up so big, and then it collapsed, all within a matter of months.
Jeff Berwick immersed himself in libertarian thoughts and Austrian economics, eventually drifting to his most uncompromising edge, anarcho-capitalism. Traditional libertarians agree
What?
on the need for a minimal state to handle courts, policing, and defense. Anarcho-capitalists go further, insisting the entire public sector should be dismantled, every function of government abolished or privatized. Anyone who wants to see a very free world does not want government, Jeff preaches.
My name is Jeff Berwick, and I am an anarchist. Anarchism is the only ethical and the most beautiful way to live.
Jeff Berwick found it difficult to reconcile being an anarchist while living in Canada. After crashing his sailboat off the coast of El Salvador and losing most of his material possessions, he decided to become a borderless citizen of the world.
I don't think of myself collectively like many people do. I don't think of myself as a Canadian. I'm a human being as is everyone else.
Yeah, okay, bro. Just say you don't want to pay taxes because that's really the gist of it. Jeff brags about having to send half of his earnings to the Great White North simply for the privilege of being born and residing there, being educated there, and taking advantage of everything else it has to offer. It just wasn't fair. But enough was enough.
nationalizing their assets, and things of that nature to help people get outside of the paradigm of what they're taught and what they're told to be being told by the media. There's a much bigger world out there, and that's what I try to help people to understand.
The dollar vigilante, or TDV, exists to cover every facet of the looming collapse of the global financial system, equipping readers to prepare and navigate what lies ahead. As the website explains, we shine light on the economic and moral implications of new government intervention in order to help you make the moves that best protect you from the theft of government intervention, both in the markets as well as with your own finances. Founder Jeff Berwick left little room to doubt about his expectations. A systemic unraveling was not just possible, but inevitable.
Because I'm looking at the Western world as being in decline. All of the Western countries, Europe, U.S., Canada, they all have massive debt.
Europe is not a country.
Massive regulation, huge taxes. U.S. dollar won't even exist 10 years from now. I think Canada is going to have a major collapse in the next 12 to 24 months. This is all going to happen in the next few years, and no one can really predict how it's going to happen or what will happen when it happens, but it's going to be world-changing event that we have to now just get as far away from the U.S. and from the Western world because this collapse is going to be messy.
Holy shit, what are we supposed to do? Stock a bunch of old, buy Bitcoin, get a second passport? Yes, unlucky board's followers, TDB, claim to have the expertise to guide them through every step, from self-directed IRAs and offshore company formation to banking strategies and, of course, passports. This group positioned itself as a one-stop shop for a financial escape plan. In fact, demand for TDB's passport services grew so intense that Jeff Berwick brought in this man for reinforcement.
I'm Ken Johnson. I was born in Michigan, grew up in Minnesota, spent about 15 years in California. My background is in real estate, the environmental industry, and also the food industry.
Frick.
Kenneth Dale Johnson, an expert in the freedom industry, joined forces with Jeff Berwick and the Dollar Vigilante in the spring of 2012. The two first crossed paths at a conference in Palm Springs, where Johnson confidently boasted that he could sell anything to anyone. His resume, littered with questionable ventures, seemed to prove him correct. Ken Johnson sold real estate in California until the 2008 collapse wiped that career off the map. From there, he pivoted into alternative medicine, hawking debunked water ionizers and anti-aging gimmicks that apparently didn't work, because before long, according to TVD's website, a noticeably aged Ken Johnson went on to, quote, educate the public on the importance of viable and effective environmental products while never preaching the facade that many refer to as global warming. Translation: Ken worked for a company called Enviro Energy, peddling residential wind turbines that turned out to be an outright scam. Ask Jay Leno. The scheme was so brazen that it could have landed the company's owner, Jim Rowan, behind bars on fraud charges, if only he hadn't fled to Canada, where endless extradition delays kept him out of prison. Ken Johnson, a recent convert to libertarianism, dodged criminal charges but found himself unemployed. He met Jeff Berwick at an opportune time. The Dollar Vigilante had virtually no marketing operation and desperately needed someone to staff the passport booth on the Freedom Conference circuit. Apparently that's a real thing and a perfect place for real remorse, free spirit. TDB was eager to sell them on the necessity of second citizenship, and Ken seemed like the type of guy who could close the deal.
The pending collapse, which we see coming, and the potential economic downfall of the states or the Western states, it is imperative to have a second passport to retain your physical and financial freedom. It doesn't mean you have to renounce or do anything unpatriotic. It's just a great way to ensure that your assets and your assets is covered.
At one of these Liberty conferences, the seats were planted for something beautiful. In July 2012, at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas, Ken Johnson was operating the booth, promoting passports and offshore bank accounts, when he was connected to a man with a plan.
Anyway, I'm talking to this guy, and he's like, hey, you looking for land, and yada, 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 and I was in the real estate business in California. I said, yeah, and I had talked to Berwick, and he said, hey, I think it'd be cool to start a community with organic food and renewable energy and all that kind of stuff. So so Colby calls me 5 minutes later.
For COVID,
Oh.
settled in Chile for good. Some suggest to avoid paying child support to the mothers of his 7 children. In 2015, he formally renounced his American citizenship. Over the years, Coben built a career as a professor of economics and public policy at several Chilean universities, publishing numerous books on these subjects, filtered through his libertarian and Christian worldview. He also became a familiar voice on Chilean radio, hosting a popular program where he championed white supremacist rhetoric and the supposed virtues of living in a country that, in his view, respected individual liberty.
If you're a libertarian, if you want to have a freer life, you have several choices, and none of them include basically staying in the northern hemisphere outside of being on a certain island. But Chile is a place where you can go that is not free of problems, but at least you can go and live in Chile, and it's a freer, saner place than where you are right now. It's a place where taxes are vastly lower. It's a place where your personal and your individual liberty is much greater in most things. You also have free markets in Chile on things like social security, which is privatized, roadways between cities, which are private, toll roads rather than owned by the government, and many other things.
That's right. For John Coben, true freedom came with toll booths. True freedom meant low taxes. True freedom meant traditional gender roles and strict drug laws. Okay, Chile wasn't perfect, but it was freer than the States, in his opinion. At least for now. Chile has survived its first female president who rolled out social
Survived.
reforms in healthcare, education, and gender equality. To Coben, this was a warning shot. A glimpse of regime is yet to come. So he set about preparing the practical steps he believed were necessary to survive them. The centerpiece of the plan was to follow John Galt's lead. John Coben wanted to create a libertarian utopia in Chile, a place where like-minded individuals could escape the oppressive forces Ayn Rand wrote about, a self-sustainable free market refuge from the inevitable economic, social, and political collapse of the Western world, but still within reasonable proximity to a major city and international airport with high-speed internet, please. John Coben had already found the perfect spot, a vast stretch of land called El Peñón, 11,000 acres in central Chile, situated an hour west of Santiago and an hour east of the Pacific Ocean. It was surrounded by natural beauty just waiting to be colonized. Coben already had a name set in stone, Gulf Gulch, Chile, a combination of words almost impossible for local Spanish speakers to pronounce. Good. They weren't divided anyway. The land would be parceled out into 3,000 separate residential lots reserved for expatriates who were experts in their field, hopefully. Coben envisioned golf courses, artificial lakes, hotels, organic farms, and gardens, all of which would provide passive income for the community to the tune of millions of dollars per year. Gulf Coast Chile would practically pay for itself. The only problem, John Coben would never be able to afford a $1.5 million price tag on his own. He would have to entice investors and pre-sell the lots. That's where Jeff Purvis comes in. Coben had heard through the libertarian grapevine that Purvis had expressed interest in a similar concept, and as a libertarian influencer, the Dollar Vigilante had access to a large audience of potential buyers. So John Coben got in touch and presented his business plan. The same month, Jeff Purvis and Ken Johnson were on a plane to Chile for a tour of the property. Purvis recounted that visit on his blog. Quote, we drove past some beautiful streams of horses and cows grazed along the way, and rabbits skittered to and fro. And a few minutes later, we were in the middle of what appeared to be a virtually untouched valley, completely enveloped by pristine mountains, rugged terrain, rolling hills, and endless vistas. My God, this is Gulf Gulch, I said breathlessly. It was settled. Jeff Burris and Ken Johnson struck a deal with John Coben and his business partner, Hermano Zagara, to acquire the land that would become Gulf Coast Chile. Since Coben already lived in the area, the Dollar Vigilante deal granted him power of attorney to establish a real estate holding company and open a bank account on their behalf. For their trouble, Coben and Zagara would pocket a $250,000 finder's fee and secure a 20% stake in the venture. The remaining 80% would be split between Burdick and Johnson, who, armed with his real estate background, was named managing partner of the development. Jeff closed on the world's Amex property in September 2012 for just under $1.2 million. By November, they've already raised $1.7 million from a private offering to a handful of early backers set up the Founders Club. These investors were promised first pick at the largest block, along with a 1% stake in GTC, and to make the offer irresistible, the founders were guaranteed a full return of their investment within 3 years, meaning their land was effectively costing nothing. It was really happening. Gulf Coast Chile was taking shape faster than anyone imagined. The land, the plans, the investors, everything looked picture perfect. Lofty brochures were already headed to the printer, ready to sell the dreams of the general public. But by year's end, the past and stories of everyone involved would diverge, and the dreams of Gulf Gulch would begin a spiral into betrayal, lawsuits, and ruin.
Gulf Gulch, Chile is a farming community in central Chile, and it's billing itself as the world's first libertarian real estate project to accept Bitcoin, that virtual currency that is soaring to new heights. We have ever-increasing virtual currency being used to purchase ever-increasing in-value tracts of land. What could possibly go wrong?
The following is a paid advertisement for the Swindle Valued Listener Rewards Program. Are you tired? I'm just family. Let me ask you this. Oh, that's not cancel anytime. Please, just give us your money.
Support for Swindle comes from Bombay. Fall's here. The kids are back in school. Still, classic coach. Friday plus. Has been satisfied. Well, head over to Bombay.
Yeah, this evolved out organically. We've been talking about what's going on. There's a lot of people who understand what we're talking about. Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged,
No.
which
Shut up.
talked about Gulf Gulch. And what happened in Atlas Shrugged was a lot of the world became socialist, communist, fascist, and all the productive people went to one place, and they just tried to escape it all. And we've actually created that vision of Ayn Rand in Chile.
Ayn Rand's vision of Gulf Gulch has become reality as of today. That was the triumphant headline Jeff Berwick splashed across the Dollar Vigilante on May 27, 2013, the first public announcement of Gulf Gulch, Chile, and the official kickoff of the pre-sale. Prospective buyers had 3 options: a 1.25 acre lot for $48,500, a 2.5 acre lot for $92,500, or a 5 acre spread for $145,000. And these were just the phase 1 prices, slashed by 40% as a limited time offer. The message was clear: act fast or miss out. According to Berwick, the demand was overwhelming.
Yeah, this is big lots, and you can build a house on them. And actually, just today, we just announced that we're just starting to sell lots of them.
This is like buying in Napa Valley or Santa Barbara 50 years ago, but with all of today's modern amenities and none of the modern day headaches, Jeff explained, which is exactly what every libertarian wants to hear, that their grand utopia is just like California.
It sounds a little like a commune, though. You could call it a commune, but it won't be a communist commune. It'll be a freedom commune.
I don't know, wrote the ideological diehard, discussing the developments recently revealed details on RonPaulForums.com. They plan to share food and water. Shouldn't everyone be free to dig their own wells and grow their own crops? There's no maid service. Hired farmers and laborers will remain under Chilean rule, and we're promoting it to the public. Have any of the people behind this actually read shocked that Ken would do such a thing without telling him. Was it true? Ken admitted it was. But, he argued, it was necessary. El Peñon set aside an environmentally protected zone, meaning it could only be subdivided into a dozen large parcels instead of the 3,000 small lots they had promised investors. Worse, the land didn't have nearly enough water to sustain the development, let alone the golf courses and artificial lakes. And even if it did, no one had filed the paperwork to secure the rights. Johnson blamed Coben for misleading them and found that even score in court. With GTC's original vision in jeopardy, Johnson claimed the project had no choice but to expand. He first tried to cut deals with neighboring landowners, offering to share profits in exchange for infrastructure projects, but found no takers. Eventually, he settled sights on a second tract called Lefty, including the bias for $6.8 million. The good news was that Lefty's massive lemon and avocado fortune would generate income immediately through a farm share program, helping offset the purchase price, so it would be worth it in the end, maybe. The bad news was that Ken Johnson paid more than double what the Lefty property was actually worth. Why? Because the seller informed him that two other men, John Coben and Fernand Izaguirre, had already agreed to purchase it for $3 million to establish their own utopia called Freedom Orchard. And let's face it, no one wants neighbors like those. Just Curtis was willing to roll with the setbacks, but still, Kent, come on, Curtis protested in this dramatic reenactment. Can you at least give your boy a heads up next time you spend $7 million of the company's funds? I'm 50% owner too, you know. Actually, you're not, Jim Johnson revealed in a heated text exchange. Curtis, he explained, wasn't an owner, a director, a manager, or even a shareholder. His name did not appear anywhere in the new incorporation documents. When the company had been restructured to push out Coben and Izaguirre, Johnson quietly assigned himself 100% of the shares, and with them, absolute control of all Sports Kilo without contributing a dime of his own money. The former founders weren't the only ones frozen out. Investors, both current and prospective, were never informed about Ken Johnson's sudden sole ownership, and many of them were loyal leaders of the dollar vigilante, which meant Jeff Burr's credibility was now on the line without any skin in the game. Ultimately, Jeff decided to go along with the new arrangement after Johnson assured him that the ownership paperwork would be sorted out, but Burris swallowed his doubts and kept promoting the project, and the money kept rolling in. According to the visitors, buyers began to notice cracks in the communication. Founders who acted secretive and paranoid, promises that no longer matched the pitch, and the creeping sense that life inside this so-called utopia might not be as advertised. The calm glow of doubt, Gulf Coast Kilo announced its first public showcase set for October 30th, 2013. Prospective buyers were invited to tour the property, while those already invested would finally have a chance to choose their lot. This seasonal occasion, the organizers promised appearances from several libertarian celebrities, including singer-songwriter Tatiana Malay, who had even composed an official theme for the project. By all accounts, the event was a success. The sizable crowd made the trip and left impressed by the visible progress on the ground. But there was one problem. The zoning permits hadn't come through, which means the entire point of the gathering, dividing up the land, never actually happened. By December 2013, even Jeff Burris had lost faith. His ownership stake still hadn't been restored, and inquiries voiced its concerns to the Founders Club investors. They agreed it was time for him to step aside. Burris was officially out, taking Gulf Coast Kilo's marketing machine with him, and without his promotional pitch, the sales that once poured in slowed to a mere trickle. In a bid to reignite interest, Ken Johnson scheduled another public event for Gulf Coast. It wasn't supposed to be a triumphant showcase of progress, only exposed how little had actually been achieved, throwing the entire project back into jeopardy.
Well, I basically am tired of being freedom as an expression. I'm just a duck of debating the expression, and I'm not wishing or disrespecting anyone who wants to debate liberty. I just want to be free.
That's Cindy McElroy, a libertarian feminist, anarchist, Locals of farmhands have most recently used them to butcher rabbits, hardly the vision of paradise of Lindsay or anyone else have exposed. The women in avocado orchards fixed that innocent cash cows turned out to be in even worse shape. Those had been neglected for years before GGC bought the land. Water starved, dried out, and barren. The irrigation system was broken. The groves were withered. There were no riches to be harvested anytime soon. To top it off, Wendy McElroy said she and her husband had been misled about the very plot of land they had chosen. But she later confronted a former GGC salesman, asking if he had known all along that the lot could legally be sold because of environmental restrictions. He answered bluntly, that is correct. In reality, the McElroys were already uneasy about Gulf Coast Chile before they ever set foot on the property. Months earlier, they had received an anonymous letter warning that the project lacked the necessary water rights for development of such magnitude. When Lindsay pressed Tim Johnson and Jeff Torres about it, they brushed it off as nothing more than the work of a bitter action slowly out to sabotage the project. On August 24th, 2014, Wendy McElroy and many other GGC investors received another email, this time signed Eddie Willis, following the name of a honest, hard-working character from Atlas Shrugged. The message claimed it was the culmination of months of investigation and thousands of dollars spent to uncover the truth about Gulf Coast Chile. It revealed that King Johnson had never provided investors with so much as a budget, financial ledger, business plan, mission statement, or any kind of formal documentation. He refused to disclose how much money had been raised, how much had been spent, where it went, how much remained, or even who legally owned the land or controlled the project. There was no transparency, no legitimate board of directors, no accountability. Secrecy gets tyranny, I read. Quote, here are a few unsolicited suggestions from someone who left a great life and job and moved to Chile in the hopes of building this ambitious project. First, you have to accept the yes of time. Most of you are probably not shocked by this news. Some of you understand the nature of investments and know that they're not sure things. For others, this may be more difficult. But you must accept that your money is gone. It's taken by a crook, a con artist without a conscience. He is a tyrant whose only power has come from the money that he has received from trusted investors. Needless to say, it is incumbent upon all of us to make sure that he receives no more. If you so, would be abetting a Ponzi scheme. The next day, Wendy McElroy went public, detailing her experience with Gulf Coast Chile in an article for the Daily Bell. Jeff Torres posted it on the Dollar Vigilante, adding that he would issue a statement of his own within days. In the meantime, a steady stream of allegations against Kim Johnson began to surface, painting a picture of chaos, recklessness, and outright fraud. He was said to carry backpacks stuffed with cash, make massive withdrawals from GGC accounts, and throw tens of thousands of investor dollars on lawyers, including $30,000 in a single month, first to explore suing John Cogan over an unenforceable non-compete, then to drag him into court for libel. He allegedly gambled at casinos, racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to hardware stores and contractors, and stitched nearly everyone he dealt with, local builders, suppliers, even the ones who wrote the project's theme song. By some estimates, nearly 100 people had worked for GGC in one capacity or another, half peripheral or fired, all soured by Johnson's erratic leadership. Meanwhile, the Leopard property deal was collapsing under the weight of late payments and crushing penalties. More than $1 million in fines in the last 12 months of 2013 alone. Rumors swirled that this was part of a kickback and laundering scheme Johnson had negotiated with the property's previous owner. And while the local community watched unpaid bills piling up, even stray dogs left to starve on the property, Kim Johnson reportedly pampered his own 17-year-old mutt, Jimmy, with nightly standing dinners. He spent lavishly on restaurants and food, but little on actual development. There was no recourse from any of it. The contracts he sold to investors were found to be legally worthless. Most of them reduced to promesas, or unenforceable promises for contracts in the future. In the end, only a single investor ever held a contract that carried any legal weight. Everyone else was cheated. And we started a place called Gulf Coast. Unfortunately, I sort of partnered with the devil, and it's just been a semi-disaster so far. Jeff significantly broke his silence that given the power on. In a statement on his website, he laid out his version of events, insisting that he had stopped find out what's happened, and it is my fault for not pushing this earlier. His name is Ken Johnson, and he's a sociopath. And if I told you some stories, you wouldn't even believe them about him. Facebook commenters were quick to point out Jeff Furlick wasn't telling the truth. Mr. Dollar Vigilante had been touting Gulf Coast Chile on Bloomberg, Coindesk, and even Mother Jones just months earlier. John Coben also reemerged to point the finger at both men. Quote, Jeff Furlick is as guilty as Kim Johnson with respect to scandal. He made the agreement as much as Kim did. He is not a righteous victim, despite what Benji wants to say about him. Jeff and Kim are scandals, plain and simple. Soon after the fraud accusations were made public, the entire online existence of Gulf Coast Chile was spread. 73 investors have contributed over $10 million to the project. Now their money, along with Kim Johnson, has seemingly disappeared. Behind the scenes, though, Kim Johnson was scrambling. In early 2014, GTC's bank accounts have been frozen over suspicious transfers that haven't been adequately identified. The solution, a backroom stock swap, is a Chilean loan shark named Mario Del Real, which rerouted GTC investor dollars to the personal bank account of Del Real's 26-year-old daughter. Predictably, the deal backfired. Long story short, more than $1 million of investor funds vanished, and in the process, Johnson accidentally signed over complete control of Gulf Coast Chile to Mario Del Real and his family. Upon realizing that he had been tricked, Kim Johnson wrote to Del Real in a panic. Hey, your attorney, this is what they represented to me. I signed the contract, taking them on their word. I don't know what the fuck I signed to speak Spanish. Mario, shrimp. Kim Johnson, now doing the list of people burned by the Gulf Coast Chile fiasco. So few were likely to feel sorry for him. A support group soon appeared on Facebook, providing victims with a platform to share their stories. One among the investor admitted they had poured his entire life savings into the project. Now he, his wife, and their 2 young children were reduced to couch persons and sleeping in their car. Another man said the stress that collapse of development had taken an even greater toll, and he had contributed to his wife's death. Building a libertarian community has been her dream. She almost died with her. The legacy seemed to write GTC's obituary. A coalition of investors rallied to form the Gulf Coast Chile recovery team, determined to salvage what is left. Led by security consultant Tom Baker and marketing specialist Kathy Cuthbert, their mission was clear. Resolve the Kim Johnson problem quickly and quietly through legal means. They weren't looking to bury the Gulf Coast brand. Only the man who had sullied it. The first step, set up a meeting with Kim Johnson and make him an offer he couldn't refuse. However, Johnson wasn't answering his phone or emails, so someone would have to travel to Chile, where he was presumably still living, and confront him face to face. On October 23rd, 2014, a team assembled by the GDC Recovery Group, which included Tom Baker and a man named E.J. Lashley, the senior trustee for the GDC Rescue Trust, flew to Chile to execute their plan, which was simple: ask Kim Johnson to leave. That night, the team made their way to the property, snipping past the gates with the help of an elderly caretaker, only to find the clubhouse abandoned and the grounds in disarray. Johnson was apparently hiding in the bush, watching it all go down, until proxies to deliver messages while he stalled. It took 2 days before EJ finally coaxed him into a meeting, offering $20,000 in the promise of no prosecution if he walked away quietly. Johnson refused, but soon fled the property anyway, leaving the recovery team to assume control. They posted a celebratory message on the internet. Gulf Coast has been reclaimed by its rightful owners, and Kim Johnson's reign of terror has ended. This is not the last you'll hear of Gulf Coast Chile.
There's still more happening with Gold Skulls.
I just saw a video of Chop.
What? No! I changed it, whoops. Yes.
Simple, we can simply say
I figured it out.
monitoring agency sent us to even start. And USD will report that we defense home security 5 years running. Right now, our listeners can save 50% on a Simply Safe home security system at simplysafe.com/windows. That's 50% off a Simply Safe home security system by visiting simplysafe.com/windows. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Hi there, this is Ken Johnson, at Gulf Chili. I want to thank you for visiting our website. I'm going to short video for you here. I'm not one to really kind of sit on in front of the camera. There's some important things that I think we need to discuss here. We've been putting a lot of hard work. There's people have been working on this project. And unfortunately, in the last year or so, and more intensively in August of last year, there's been some negative things said about our project that are completely untrue.
After reclaiming the property in October 2014, the Gulf Coast Chiller Recovery Team spent the next 6 months trying to clean up the literal and figurative mess. The legal battles quickly piled up. Civil cases were filed to declare the lead-based purchase null and void, while investors also launched criminal cases against Ken Johnson and Chile. The recovery team also submitted a 130-page forensic report to the FBI's white-collar fraud division and the IRS's criminal investigations division, alleging affinity fraud and requesting additional action. All this potential government intervention made some of the investors queasy. As Jeff Berwick wrote, even libertarians, many of GBC's investors were against the use of government courts to correct injustices and receive the property they paid for. But what they found was that there was simply no other way to regain their stolen property without doing so. Imagine that. Another aspect of the recovery involved untangling GBC's affairs from those of Mario Del Real. The investors offered him $50,000 cash to walk away, and he accepted. However, a few months later, in January 2015, Del Real's associates returned to the trust and stripped Gulf Coast Chile of anything they could haul off: farm equipment, tools, furniture, even trees in the place chopped down and sold for firewood.
Wow.
On April 20th, 2015, the members of the recovery team who had been tasked with holding down the fort received another surprise visit from a different group of men, and this time, these men had guns. Open the gates, we are coming in, one way or another, they warned the watchmen. Inside, they confiscated everyone's phones and held them hostage. A few hours later, in walked former developer Ken Johnson,
What?
to claim what he insisted was rightfully his.
What the freak?
The restoration of Gulf Coast Chile has started, declared a statement posted on April 25th, 2015, to the project's newly resurrected Facebook page. In an interview with the Pan Am Post, Ken Johnson announced he had launched criminal proceedings against those who had stolen GBC and occupied it illegally for 6 months, along with the Del Real family with whom the recovery team had been in cahoots. What a twist. That's right, Johnson said. The public only knew half of the story, none of it accurate, and he was ready to reveal the truth.
I'm going to go through history here and tell you what's gone on, why we're here, some of the characters, discuss some of the false accusations made on me, and really release some documents. I keep talking about doing this, but I don't ever have time to sit down and do it. It's quite time consuming to go file through thousands of past emails outlining everything I'm telling you. I'd like to tell you. So,
So let's go back to the beginning. Ken Johnson said he never cut John Coben and Armand Hidegara out of the deal. They agreed to part ways after Johnson caught Coben trying to sell the El Peñon land out from under GBC to another libertarian dreamer named Simon Black, who wanted to start his own utopia.
we dissolved the corporation. They signed a non-disclosure agreement and notarized John Coben and Armand Hidegara. So there's been some stuff there that Gulf Gulch, I stole Gulf Gulch from John Coben. It's just, that's a total lie.
Nor did he embezzle any money, Ken Johnson said. Over 80% of our money has gone to land acquisition,
too many details about that, so we gotta back it up and figure that out. It's all gonna lead back, in my opinion, to Josh Hurley, Kathy Dufford, Thomas Baker, Ken Carpenter, Jeff Burwick.
Josh Curley, a former investor who is now working with the recovery team, Johnson said, was the person who authored the Eddie Willis letter. They were all in on it together, trying to wrest the property away from him. And if you want to hear something even shadier, Johnson noted, Edward J. Lashley, the recovery team's trustee, and a convicted fraudster. Lashley pleaded guilty to his part in the $80 million Ponzi scheme called the Genesis Fund in 2003. Johnson accurately pointed out. Let's look at the company these people keep.
But they want people to think that I'm some kind of psychotic asshole. I'm not.
Well, Kim, what about that accusation that you let dogs starve to death on the property? That seems kind of psychotic. Not true, you sure? Kim said he loves dogs, which means he would even take them straight or needed surgeries and pay for them out of his pocket. If anything, the recovery team was the one responsible for harming animals, Kim said. He went for a hike one morning and found Flacco, the German Shepherd, bolting by the front gate. They went to dinner at a time when members of the recovery team had been spotted on location.
It's my belief that possibly Catherine Cuthbert or Thomas Baker may have poisoned Flacco. I don't know if they did that. I have no proof of it, but definitely wouldn't take past them.
All right, well, what about the most scandalous charge of all? Painting using the people. The allegation that Ken Johnson isn't even a real good attorney. That was probably true.
I'm not a political person. I don't believe in political labels. There's been some of that involved with that project, unfortunately, due to the name, Gulf Gulch. I wasn't actually a big fan of the name, to be honest with you.
Ken Johnson came clean about having never even read which says
What?
Gulf Gulch was not only embarrassingly cheesy, but also a magnet for the worst kind of people. The kind of people who read and run the dollar vigilante. Speaking of which, Kim also admitted he had deliberate resistance to both himself and the project from Jeff Burwick. The reason Burwick was scaring off investors. According to Kim, Jeff had been a drunken liability since day one, so hungover on their first trip to Chile that they couldn't even inspect the $1 million property they were about to purchase.
I'm not kind of so in the morning that John Coben came to pick me up, wake him up so he can take a shower and get ready to go, and I had coffee with his room. He said, no, he didn't want to go, and he ended up hanging out with her, and then he flew home with his wife a few hours later that day.
Things didn't get much better for Burwick after that. He was soon exposed as the co-founder and pitchman of a Bitcoin ATM venture that never actually existed. At the same time, his passport business was under fire from disgruntled customers who claimed they'd been scammed. One of them even sent Ken Johnson a recording of a video call with Burwick, where Jeff himself admitted that his practice of bribing corrupt government officials to expedite the process hadn't exactly gone according to plan. So yeah, Ken Johnson decided the smartest move was to push forward without Jeff Burwick. Still, it was hard not to feel a little sorry for the guy.
Getting back to early August now, we closed on the land. Burwick came and apologized to me and said, oh, woe is me, I'm suicidal. And, my wife was raped in Argentina, yada, yada, yada.
Yada yada yada.
Yada yada or something like that.
That's what I was saying.
The local police in Argentina actually determined that Jeff's wife, Marina Lopez Burwick, had falsely accused the man of sexual assault and pressed charges against her. She and Jeff decided to flee the country and play it safe.
The whole Gulch thing has to be one of the most insane things I've read about in quite a while. So I'm very happy to have Ken on the line. Ken, welcome to the Radical Agenda.
As 2015 came to an end, Ken Johnson continued to amplify his side of the story on libertarian radio shows and podcasts, which there is no shortage. But everyone who was following the story still had no idea what was true.
And like I said at the beginning of this thing, I don't believe that there are clean hands on anybody here. If you're telling me a story where you're completely above board and you're dealing with all of these shady things, and frankly, Ken, I don't buy it. There's a situation where, hang on a second. You're talking about a situation where you're 99% owner of a property when other people have paid for that. You were 99% owner, and then you got swindled by the Del Real. But you were at some point, right? And now you've been swindled, okay? And so you've got this
Swindled.
situation where you're employed with the Del Real and you're trying to regain control of this property. But you're describing a situation where Jeff Berwick, through the Dollar Vigilante, through his newsletter, through his audience, is raising capital to buy some property. You end up being 99% owner of that property. That doesn't make any sense at all, and you know it. The entire thing here is everybody pointing fingers at everybody else, and that tells me that everybody's completely full of shit, okay? I'm certain that everybody involved in this thing is a fucking crook. And it's so difficult to fucking weed through all of this crap.
Yeah, that about covers it. And just to really drive home that everyone in this story sucks, the man in that clip with a radical agenda was none other than Christopher Cantwell, who might make him by his more infamous nickname, the Crying Nazi. It's this tearful meltdown after being charged for pepper spraying counter-protesters at the 2017 Unite the Rights rally in Charlottesville.
We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful, you know? I know we talk a lot of shit on the internet, right? But like literally, we've been coordinating with law enforcement the entire time. Every step of the way, we've tried to do the right thing.
Anyway, when Johnson's attempt to resurrect CGC dragged on through 2016, he then turned to a cultural exchange website, luring in volunteers to work on the project for free. That's the initiative, and the recovery team caught wind of it and threatened the referral company with a lawsuit, cutting off its pipeline of unpaid labor. By year's end, a hearing was scheduled in Chilean court regarding the felony case against Kim Johnson brought by the recovery team for allegedly defrauding 73 families out of $10.45 million. The hearing was set for December 12th, but Johnson never showed. His lawyer claims he rushed to the U.S. to care for his ailing parents. Still, the only evidence submitted was a boarding pass to Argentina, where Johnson conveniently held citizenship. He never returned to Chile. That same day, Gulf Coast, Chile, was violently raided and seized by Mario Del Real's men. Workers reported being shot at, beaten, and driven off the property as the buildings were ransacked yet again. Litigation and arbitration dragged on for years. From what's known, the properties of Gulf Coast, Chile are slated to be auctioned off if they haven't been already, with the proceeds earmarked to repay investors, thus marking the official end of what one local observer described to the National Post as, quote, another dumb bingo story. But don't worry, it's never-ending story. Gets even dumber.
Good afternoon, everybody. John Tobin here, the voice of Libertarians. I'm just making a quick recording here, and some people may be missing it. Basically, I just want to let you know what happened. I was in fear for my life today when I went down to the gun range to shoot the gun I legally hold with a transporting license that I legally have in Chile. And when I was going into downtown Reñaca, I swung by the beach. And as I did so, my car was surrounded by a mob of people.
In late October 2019, outrage over a 4-cent subway fare hike in Santiago ignited a wave of protest that soon engulfed the entire country of Chile. What began as a small act of defiance swelled into weeks of nationwide demonstrations against decades of neoliberal reforms, such as the privatization of water, highways, pensions, and more. The very policies that have once made Chile such an attractive place for free market purists, like one of the original partners of GGC, John Coben. On November 10th, 2019, 56-year-old John Coben was driving along the beach in Reñaca, Chile, minding his own business when he encountered a group of
Oh,
violent,
the video's about to end.
quickly surrounded